or maybe make some changes to our lifestyles and all the big sort of issues that are facing us. And I think we need to be able to look at those aspects which I think are positive. And this subject that we're going to be covering today, Tesla, is one big solution for the post-pandemic world that could make a big, big difference. Now, how so, you may ask, and that's what we're going to find out with this presentation that I've got. Now, what I'm going to be covering is all these topics over here. An overview to start off, let's say. We're going to be talking about energy to some extent, essentially because energy is something that we come across in every walk of life, every activity of ours, from transport to food production to manufacturing. Think of it, energy is the basis. And if we can sort out this business of energy in some sort of hopeful fashion for the future, then I think we have taken a good decision. Now, you see, the classical approach has always been the wood, the coal, and then, of course, oil. And oil has been a disaster, caused so much emission and carbon dioxide, warming of the globe, climatic changes, which are being sort of, symptomatic of all these big storms that are coming across from the Pacific to the USA and the droughts that are taking place elsewhere. So this energy is so fundamental to our lives. And if you look at the next sectors, Elon Musk is the name there, that fellow who's got that mantra as well under his belt. He says he wants to do three things. And those three things are, first, he wants to make the world a sustainable energy world. Secondly, he wants to make the world into an interplanetary world for the species. And then, of course, internet. Now, we've done the Starlink as far as the internet goes, but we'll be covering the other things which are to do with SpaceX and all the other items that are written over here, which are all fundamental to that big vision of delivering on these three sort of big areas: the energy, the internet, and the space. So let's see now. The energy has so much impact on the climate, as we have seen already. And the pollution that is created by the fossil fuels is not diminishing. And the climate agreements that we have made to date are not going to be able to sort of really be sufficient to see the world through. We are going to be facing increase in temperatures. And if the temperature increases by up to 2 degrees, we are going to be facing a very, very sort of different type of world. A lot of species will be destroyed and vegetation and so on. So there's a big danger there. That's why I think the next climate gathering here is going to have to take some really good decisions. And of course, it affects our society overall. It affects the climate is bad, then of course we are going to be having poor health. People die. And the migrations taking place because of drought and whatnot. So huge scale changes are in the offing if we don't take the right decision. And we saw that, in the 80s, when there was, I think I had mentioned it in my first lecture, that when there was this big ozone layer problem, the world got together and they were able to come to an agreement, and they banned these CFCs, the chlorofluorocarbons and so on. And now the ozone layer is coming back to normal. And you may be surprised to know that the ozone layer is only 2 millimeters thick, would you believe? And despite the fact it's only 2 millimeters thick, it protects the world and the species and life from ultraviolet radiation that comes into from space, from the sun and so on. So it's very critical. So the whole thing is a very fragile setup. And if we sort of don't watch it, we are going to be having disaster, taking place. Okay, now that the overall sort of picture we understand, so we need to do something about energy, and we'll talk a little bit about as far as the transport industry is concerned, what percentage of that contributes towards the climate emissions and problems. So I'll show you some figures later on in our presentation as we progress. I'm going to be talking a bit about the electric car simply because the electric car is the foremost means of vehicle for us to get about. And they contribute a heck of a lot of pollution if using the fossil fuel. So we'll see with the help of the electric cars how we can swing it. And there are so many other benefits of safety concerns, in terms of being able to be more efficient and less pollution and so on. So I'll talk about that a little bit and see how it works. All these electric cars will, of course, going to be powered by the battery, the powertrain. The battery will be the new fossil fuel, if you like. The battery is going to be the power behind the electric transport. And where are they all going to be built? They're going to be built in these big gigafactories, as they're called. There are 4 or 5 of them at the moment. We'll talk a bit more about that. And what are the various types of models that are coming out as far as electric vehicles are concerned? These are the ones. I'll just show you pictures of that. And the competition. Now, the competition, as you know, is trying its best to try and sort of put obstacles in the way of these electric cars of Tesla, in particular, because he's the new guy on the block, and therefore he's got bringing in new technology, which is less dependent on these massive supply chains, which normal sort of automotive industry is concerned with. That automotive industry has enormous global supply chains, and they are tied into that, and it's sort of a very sticky type of problem for them to get out of. So they're trying to put the brakes on Tesla in so many ways. So let's look at the first thing that we are going to be looking at in a bit more detail is this. Okay, so that's the goal. The first goal that we said that Elon Musk is going to be thinking about is sustainable energy. And that's why he wants to take the transport sector to a place where we can have energy without having to have the pollution associated with it. Now, this is the pollution. You can see if you go to some of the industrial towns and so on, they look like some of those early sort of cold days where everything was just smoky. And even today in some parts of the world, this is the scene that you see, clogging up the atmosphere with all sorts of pollutants and bad news for us, for our lungs, and for so many other things that we can think about. Okay, what is the contribution that we are seeing in terms of the sector that is going to be affected if we go electric? So this is the part which concerns the transport industry. As you can see, if you add this 16.5% to the SC and other type of transports as well, it's about 25% or 20% of the whole emissions, CO2 emissions. And this is an old figure, by the way. It's a pretty sizable sort of chunk of the pie that is shown. And what we are seeing here is not just the automotive industry that is going to be impacted, but along with that automotive industry comes the development of batteries. Batteries are the heart of the motive power here in electric cars. And if those batteries are made in a manner which are affordable and are efficient, then you can bring them into the houses, residential use as well, in terms of the requirements of houses for heating and whatnot. And there are other sort of industries as well which are dependent on fossil fuels. They can also be offset with the battery development that is going on in here. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and see what they are like. Okay, this tells us a little bit about greenhouse gas emissions from transport by this is a 2014 figure. See, these are the greenhouse gases, and you can see the road transport over here is contributing 73% nearly of the total. Aviation and the railways, smaller sort of cousins of that. And that is the greenhouse emissions in this sort of pie chart. And the energy demand by these different modes, if you like, is shown in this graph here in this pie. And you can see it's the same thing. The blue thing is again the cars, electric cars, the road transport. And you can see that if we go the Tesla way of electric cars in the future, what a huge impact it's going to be on the road industry, on the road traffic. Now, this is the guy who's going to be leading the charge on this front. We saw his face last time as well. He's a visionary, and just to those people who are a bit new, he's from South Africa. Became a Canadian and then came into the USA. Developed this app called Zip2, made some money, then did PayPal, made some more money, and then put all that money into buying Tesla car, which was an early type of manufacturing sort of entity. And then when he put his money in, he's made it into what it is today. So real visionary. And he thinks that this way of taking the bull by the horns is to complete his vision of energy sustainability is to have these electric cars first. And electric cars are also going to fund his space program. So it's a sort of a more sort of multiple objectives being accomplished over there. Now, this is a type of car that's already been available. You can buy them, and and they have these noise-free, pollution-free, high performance, and expected to replace the IC, the internal combustion engine. We call this ICE machine instead. And these ICE machines are, very complicated. If you look at the motor car's engine, very complicated, thousands of parts in there, long supply chains to, and very inefficient as well at the end of the day. And this electric car, in fact, does so much better. Now, what are the advantages of this? Some of this we can quickly go through that. High performance vehicles, in fact, the performance is so good that its acceleration is the fastest by any standard, by any car. So you can see it's already attained such a high level of performance. So it's well ahead of the ICE manufacturers, the internal combustion engine manufacturers. Very good response because if you press the gas pedal, it takes a bit of time to accelerate, but this one goes shooting off like a rocket. No noise, so no pollution at the vehicle level. Well, there is going to be pollution in terms of having to make the car and to also do the production of batteries and so on. But given that whole thing, the picture is still 50% better than the ICE car manufacturer. So it's still ahead on that front as well. Very low maintenance cost because the machinery in there, as I'll show you later on, is very, very sort of, simple and very sort of understandable as well as to how it works. It's also very safe because it has an autopilots and all that. It's got these other types of advantages, high torque and all that. So that's the engineering sort of aspect of it. Disadvantages, long wait charging time. Well, at the moment that is coming down because the research done on the battery side is causing that thing to sort of shorten quite a bit. And they're buying companies up which are leading on that. They just bought somebody called Maxwell, which is helping them to sort of make their process a bit shorter and the charging time faster. The low range, at the moment, see the range of these batteries is that takes them about 300-400 kilometers. They want to extend that. And of course, the cost is relatively high at the moment, but at the moment, they are competitive enough to be able to sort of match the other cars which are the fossil fuel cars. Now, this is another type of vehicle that is they're making. It's a big truck. It's a 40-ton truck, because you know road transport in USA is you know it carries half the traffic, I think, or even more. Apart from the railways, it's the road. So it's a huge sort of industry, the haulage industry. And he's making it, in fact, in such a way that there's not going to be any driver there. So it's just going to be, sooner or later, a truck that is going to be going around and working 24 hours a day, and not just, as it says over here, only 9 hours a day. So you're going to, the people are going to lose their job driving the truck, and this truck will work for 24 hours a day rather than just 9 hours a day. And of course, it's going to be carrying a fair amount of payload. This is a 40-ton truck or thereabouts, and battery space and weight and payload is still sizable there. And this is going to be one of what they call a disruptive industries. It's going to cause a huge impact on society. Okay, how does it work? I'm not going to spend too much time because but very quickly go through that. There's something called the induction motor. This is the guy, that's why he's called Tesla. That's the name of the car as well. He invented in that sort of period, a type of motor called the induction motor. And I'll just explain to you what it is. It is made up of two parts, one an outer shell and one is a rotor inside. And the basic principle is that if you put a current through it, an AC current on this rotating magnetic field, this stator as they call it, sorry, then that causes the rotor to turn. See? So it's as simple as that. You just give it a current, an AC current, and that AC current then will turn this little inside rotor. And that's basically is what this electric car is about. Of course, they need to have a few bits and pieces here to be able to make that into a reality. And one of them is, this is just a comparison to say that this type of ICE motor for the internal combustion engine is a vertical, so pistons, go up and down, they turn these things, flywheels here and so on. Very, very inefficient and takes a lot of fuel, a lot of energy is wasted. So here is this induction motor turning this rotor here, and compared to that ICE engine, this is the advantage you can see. This weight is 180 kilograms, it's only 31 kilograms, 32. The power it gives for a normal engine here, that's 140 kilowatts. Here it's about twice as about 270. So weight power ratio is 0.8, here is 8, so it's 8 to 10 times better and more efficient. So you can see already the advantage. And how does it work now? Well, there is something called an inverter. You know that batteries give you DC supply, direct current. It's not alternating current, it's not AC. Now, this induction motor wants AC. So what you have is a DC current being inverted into an AC, sorry, the DC current converted into an AC current through this inverter and then used this way, see? And the amplitude of this current controls the power, the amount of power, and the frequency of this controls the speed of the turning of the motor. So you can see how simple principles are being used to compare to an ordinary car, which is so complicated, so many bits and pieces to it. Therefore, it has a big advantage in terms of manufacturing and in the cost and performance and so on. Okay, it's dependent on battery power. There's battery. Now, what is he using? He's using these little round things, which are lithium batteries. Although the name is lithium, it's only 2% of that has lithium in it. And even that is going to be changed over sooner or later with new research coming in. into having even less, and some cobalt, which is also going to be replaced, which is a bit more expensive material. But all in all, they are delivering, you see the thousands of these things there, and they put them into packs like this. Each pack is here like that. So the whole bottom of the car is is full of batteries with so many cells in it, and it provides the rigidity as well for the car, so that sideways crashes and all that protect people inside. So very good in terms of structure as well. Now, gigafactories, okay, these are the factories that have been built or are in the process of being built. Now, we've got about 4 or 5 of them in the pipeline, but Elon Musk says that I think before long he's going to have 10 to 20 of them. And each of these gigafactories produces enormous amounts of cars. Each one prepares something like 500,000 to 1 million cars. See, this one, the first one in Fremont, California, builds all these models with about 10,000 employees. Now, why so few employees? Well, because the factories are highly automated, and I'll show you pictures of that. Now, the next one is this Giga in Nevada that produces lithium batteries, because batteries is the one bottleneck that they have to overcome because they're not producing enough batteries. Panasonic is the other supplier of batteries, but sooner or later, Tesla is going to do their own batteries. As you know, in the other Starlink project, you remember, I think we said that Elon Musk wants to be vertically integrated as much as he can, so he's controlling a lot of stuff. Even in the case of these car, he wants to be as vertically integrated as possible. He wants to make the lithium and maybe sooner or later buy up the mines as well that has lithium. There's one in New York that produces all these types of things, some more batteries and other equipment. The Giga 3 has opened up in Shanghai. They're starting already to produce some cars. Now, one thing about China, China has given Elon Musk the full control over his factory without having a local investor, which is very unusual for China, because China demands that local investors should be there so that they can, twist the arms of the local people and so on. So they've allowed Musk to have his own factory producing these cars without any share of the local partner. Now there's one opening up in Berlin. So in a place called Grunheide. So that's being built at the moment. So it's not complete yet. And this other facility. So there is all that activity going on. Now, this is the size of the Tesla factory. This is the equivalent to over 100 football pitches. You can imagine, how big that is. So he buys these land in sort of areas which are affordable and not very expensive. He puts these massive factories and which are highly automated on top of that. Here's another factory. See, it says it's larger than 100 football fields. This one here. It's already, this is one that is already built. This is the one in Berlin, in Giga Berlin, they call it Grunheide. I think it should be operational soon this year. This one is Giga Factory 3 in China. It's already operational. They're building cars there. Sorry. Now this is the factory, highly automated. In fact, what Elon Musk says is that to build the Tesla car, which is a machine, you need a bigger machine. And he puts a lot of effort on this bigger machine, which is the factory, which he then replicates to different parts of the world, so that you can then have these, 500,000 to 1 million cars being produced on the lines of this particular gigafactories that are already developed and producing. It's highly automated stuff. See, there are all these thousands of robot arms here. Each does their bit. You hardly see any human beings around. Looks like one of these space sort of, environments. Okay, this is the one where he says he's going to have up to about 10 to 20 gigafactories in various parts of the world to build these various types of models of cars and trucks and whatnot. He's also thinking of building one in India. Now, in terms of the range, this is a performance. We're talking about performance here. Now, compared to all the other automotive companies, Tesla is easily a few years ahead of all of them in terms of providing the range, in terms of the technology for the autopilot, and for, oops, we're running out of things, so we might have to give you a little bit more of a chance to do a Q&A after we come back, right? Because I tried to, as I said, I've got 10 minutes more, so we can keep going. And once it cuts out, I'll send you a new link and you can come back, all right? So performance is a pretty important part. They're way ahead of the competition.
Can I just ask, Shafiq, how much they cost?
Yeah, under $50,000. They're comparable to the other sort of cars of equal performance, you know. I've got somewhere, I think, some cost figures. I'm not sure if it's what happened there. Oh, I see. Yeah, I've got to move this. Performance and cost. Here we are.
Right.
All right. The long range version of the Model 3, which is the Tesla. So this is the running cost. It works out to 3.6 cents per mile compared to 15 cents per mile for the fossil fuels. So you can see it's quite a few times better in terms of running costs. And in terms of the one-time cost also, it's a comparable price. Now here are the costs here. You see, this is the competition, as it were, and Tesla is right down here. They're selling at $35,000, and you can see, Chevy 37, Kia 32, Nissan 30, 28, Volkswagen. But even though the costs of some of these are lower, the performance is not as good. See, the range here is 220, whereas all the other ones, this one is 238, which is better, but then it's more expensive. But then the other ones have very low range. The power, the top speeds and all that, that's miles per hour. I think it's 130 miles per hour compared to all these. So you can see it's a markedly better product, which has less running costs and superior performance. So autopilot is again one of the technologies which he's developing, which is quite advanced. At least some people say about up to 4 to 5 years advanced compared to the other cars. And what it is based on is got a pilot which has multiple sensors placed all around the car. These sensors help the car understand its environment so it can safely steer itself in most highway situations. So at the moment, it can do the highways relatively easy compared to some of the intricate sort of, clogged up roads. So what does it mean as far as autopilot is concerned? It means that they're going to challenge Uber and Lyft. Sooner or later, this Uber and Lyft will also disappear because the autopilot cars will come in. So you just have to call a car and they'll come to your doorstep by itself. Car ownership will also could be ending in a post-pandemic world in the future. We don't have to have our own car. You can just dial up a car and that car will come and you just pay. A bit like taxi, but nobody's driving it. And furthermore, these cars, because of their battery capability of being able to sort of use battery power and then alternately, give back power, they can generate power to feed their homes as well. So you have multiple uses as well there. Okay, I think we are.
coughing.
Oh, I see. All right. Yeah. Well, yeah, Sarah.
I think one of the things that I've heard is because electric cars are so heavy, they actually cause a lot of pollution from the friction of the tyres against the road. More pollution, air pollution, than an IC engine does.
Why?
Because of the weight of the car, the weight of the battery increases the friction of the tyres against the road, which throws off more particulates into the air, which means that electric cars at the moment are actually producing more pollution, not more carbon emissions, but more air pollution than an IC car.
Really?
So reducing the weight of a battery is pretty critical, really, on urban roads particularly.
Yeah, I haven't come across that being mentioned, but you may be right, because the weight of the battery is quite a bit, but at the same time, what it does is it lowers the center of gravity of the car. It's a lot more safer, and it has more space for more sort of for luggage and so on. But in terms of its high performance, because it can accelerate very fast, the friction, of course, does generate those extra bits with the road. And of course, the other thing is, because it's not, if it's a slow type of increase, then I can see there is less wear and tear. But as you say, with a high performance thing, it's going to require some special care to be taken so that you don't pollute more than the other cars. I'm sure they'll come around to doing something about that. Yeah. All right. What have we got?
When
Yeah.
you were talking about these factories, will they be completely fully automated factories?
Yes.
Like, will they be basically run by robots?
Well, there'll be people, but not as many as in a normal sort of factory. A lot of this work is going to be done by robots, and these robots can work 24 hours a day. See, and the issues that we're going to have to deal with as a society. That when robots start to come in a big way, they are the people who will create the wealth. And the jobs may not be there for human beings. So what we have to do is to probably think about this UBI, Universal Basic Income. Because the government will have the money, the taxes, whatever they do from the wealth that the robots create, and they have to distribute it in a manner which will keep the people happy and occupied in some way.
But do you think that the people who run the world will be happy to have lots of the rest of us having all this leisure time and being given a guaranteed income? As I know what you're talking about, but I think that maybe there's something going along the lines of a massive depopulation now through this virus, and then there's automation coming in, because not many people are going to be working, and I can't see them being very beneficial and offering 2/3 of the world extended leisure time.
Yeah. Well, you remember in my first lecture when we talked about some thoughts on this global sort of situation, we said that the model that we've been following, which is the post-Second World War model, free markets and the institutions that were developed, the UN, the World Bank, and so on, these were then taken up by Margaret Thatcher as being really very aggressive policies, which put the emphasis on individualism and on free market forces to solve the problems. Whereas now we have to start looking at a bit more as a society. How is society going to benefit, not just individuals? And therefore, I think that change in thinking has got to come, and I think we need to do something about that. I think unless we change the model that has worked since the Second World War, to face the new realities with AI coming in, big data coming in, and so on, and jobs being lost, there is going to be a need for rethinking whether that model is still, workable. So, plenty to think about that.
Yeah, but that's a big if, because like historically, it's always seen that there's always been about 1% of people running everything or owning everything, and the rest of the people bowing down, working before them. I'm not sure how it can operate where you will have this sort of system. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen, because unfortunately I can't see any way out of robots. I think that they're going to be in fact, Barnet Council now have an answering service which is exclusively robots. When you phone them up, you think you're talking to an operator, but you're actually talking to a robot, and they can answer you all your housing questions and put you through to the right department, etc. What do other people think?
Well, for one thing, I think that our transport can all be run by electric. Everything like Shafiq, like you were saying, that maybe something like a car services, and when we need a car going somewhere, we can ring it. It can all be electric.
Well, we did have things called trams. Remember the trams? No, sorry, not trams, trolley buses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Trolley buses were electric. They run with big poles, didn't they?
They were great.
Well, there are countries in Europe that are trying out free transport totally. I think one of them is one of these Lithuanian or the Baltic republics, and then Luxembourg is also trying it out, where everybody is given free transport.
Yeah.
And no cars to be owned, because there's everywhere you can go free, and the few places that you want to go by car, I suppose, will be less than what would be normally the case.
It seems to me, Shafiq, that Tesla have got a possible solution in the first world, or in the where there's a autocratic ruler. I mean, one of the big shifts that's taken place in the last 10 years has been the rise of from extreme poverty to lower middle class, for want of a phrase, in Asia. And I'm not sure what Tesla's solution to the person earning $500 to $1,000 a year in India. What is Tesla's message?
I think Tesla is looking at solving technologically problems which are facing us in terms of large issues, which only a big sort of entity can do. We small people can't do all those things. So he's coming up with these big ideas about energy, about space, and about global internet, that sort of thing. And in the process, it's going to help, I think, the common man everywhere. But it's the political systems that need to sort of come up to speed to try and manage the new world in a manner which is much more equitable. At the moment, what we have is nationalism, as somebody mentioned, is pulling us in one way. The identity issue is, exploited by the world leaders, put the fear. These sort of leaderships, I think, are people that we ourselves put up there. So we need to recognize that our responsibility is to try and, put some responsible people who can do something good to society, not people like Trump, who seems to be destroying society and the world over.
Shafiq, what makes you confident that in the post-pandemic world, we don't just all revert to our worst natures and governments will just try and fire up the economy by using what is now very cheap oil? rather than going to a much better technology like electric.
Yeah, I think there will be a big sort of fight to maintain the status quo. And you're very right saying the oil lobby is so strong, they're going to fight on every sort of front. It reminds me of the time when I was, looking at this, the railroads in North America. They were coming in a big way, but then the motor car lobby came in and destroyed them totally and started to invest in highways and so on and so forth. And that is the game that gets played by the people who are in power. But I think one thing that is happening in a way which favors the common man is that we've got a bit more information at our disposal with all this social media and all that. Just let's disregard the fake news and all that, but that amount of awareness, I think, will make for a better decision making the world over. It may take time because at the moment, you see, it's the ignorant people who are taken advantage of, either by the religious people or by the political identity people, and people who wish to profit from it for their own personal agendas. But technology is going to be delivering, I think, some hope for the mankind, and awareness is the first step in that, and that's why the global internet is important. And then the access to information first and foremost, and then after that, further sort of, we have to ensure that there are some checks and balances, that no abuse takes place. That's where we need to have some thinking done. We'll have to see that. So I'm hopeful, by the way.
Good.
Okay.
It seems to me that the cost of those cars got to come down dramatically if they're going to take off at all. I mean, he might produce all these thousands and thousands of cars and nobody can buy one. It just seems the cost is prohibitive, isn't it? I mean, 50,000, 30,000.
35,000.
Oh, yeah.
35,000. I mean, well, I'm not going to get one. I would like,
But,
seems like a great idea.
You're absolutely right, because the cost is going to come down for the poorer countries. Like if India starts to make these gigafactories that get there, the costs are going to be lower. So I would think that, you see, at the moment, the costs have to do with paying for manpower and for parts. Parts are going to be, again, made by people in some factory or the other. So if the cost can be brought down, the cost can be brought down. So we'll have to see whether we are heading the right way there or not. Yeah, Pam.
And also the charging points. At the moment, there are not enough charging points and people are queuing up to plug in, because my son has an electric van and that's a problem at the moment. So there would need to be maybe individual charging points in people's homes or something.
Well,
Very expensive, I know that.
Sorry.
Yeah, there are going to be, adapters so that you can charge it from your home as well. They are coming in, and they're a lot easier to install rather than making huge tanks with petrol in them and having pumps of all sorts. You just take a wire down there and that's it. So in terms of, and also the times for charging is considerably cut down. It's gone down from half an hour, not even talking about 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, you can charge up the whole thing. And then you have multiple layer of batteries as well, which can, take you to a certain distance and then charge up again and whatever. So you'll be able to sort of find, and it's got these maps which tells you where is the next charge point. So they're going to try and get to have a change in delivery system as well. You see, the normal automobile cars are sold through dealers. And the dealers give the factories the money, and they collect the money from the public. Now, in the case of Tesla, they're cutting out the dealerships. So you can just go to internet and order a car and it'll come to you. And that's it. It's as straightforward as that. So quite an exciting future ahead there. Right. So, any more questions?
It'd be very interesting if you could, just plug it into the wall socket and then load it up.
Yeah.
It'd be a bit expensive though, I'd imagine.
Yeah, bills to go up.
Yeah. Well, the thing is this, that you're going to be having these battery packs which will cap. You see, one of his other projects is the one that I'll be talking about at some future date, is the home, the tiles. He's got tiles which are like solar converters, solar cells. So, and they produce energy, and you store it in these big battery packs that he's providing, so that the whole house can be run on electricity, which you capture from the sun, and be able to then charge your car, and then the car in turn can also do some charging back to the grid if you have excess power. So it is a far sort of big change. When you have electricity, it's so much cleaner.
Can't you just put the solar panels on the top of the car?
Yeah, except that they're not sort of sufficiently powerful to be able to do that. You need to have a lot more.
I mean, that would be easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Sooner or later, I think even that will be there. He's put those solar panels on top of his factories, which are 100 football pitches big. So that collects a lot of sun and captures energy. Yeah.
I was involved in a project about 10 years ago. We were going to build a co-housing community, and the houses were all going to be what they call passive house. It's a heating system that was developed in Germany, and you use all the power from the hairdryer, from the cooker, from the whatever washing machine, and it's pumped out of the house and then pumped back in as power. And the energy bills were going to be reduced by 90%.
Oh, right.
But we couldn't find a company in this country that were willing to do it.
Yeah,
well,
but that was
yeah.
Go ahead.
My brother works in used to work in construction, and he said for years we've been able to build houses in the UK without gas central heating. You can make, like you're saying, these various ways of conserving energy, recycling energy, but nobody in the British public wants to buy a house without gas central heating. They just wouldn't trust it. Yeah. So, it was a non-starter. They tried. There are some in the UK, but nobody wants one.
We tried every which way. There were about 30 households, and we found a plot of land, and we were going to build. But we were going to do it with Hanover Housing Association. But in the end, we couldn't find a contractor that would do it. No. And the price kept going up and up and up. And in the end, they built the properties without passive house.
Really?
So we all backed out.
Back to traditional.
Yeah.
It's got to come in a sort of a very big way. Little companies, I don't think will, have much of a chance of trying to win over from the status quo and the big guys. The big guys will just smother them, and that's it. So you need another big guy to smother them, keep your head above the water. So he's
the materials that can help, because when my company, my organization moved into a large new building, I think it's now about 7-8 years ago, and it was the Civic Centre in Wembley. And when we moved in, we saw these quite ugly grey walls, and they gave us a tour before we moved in. the building had just been built. And they said, well, if everyone is disappointed about what looks like cement walls, be reassured. We've built this with material which keeps cool in summer and warm in winter. So you will be using a lot less power to keep it warm and cold.
Well, you're
Can
talking
be done.
about this message.
What about the military? Would the military be able to take advantage of all this?
Yeah, they are. In fact, they're very keen on taking advantage of the rockets that he's developing. You know, especially when I do my talk on the space project, then we'll cover that.
Okay.
Are we finished, Shafiq?
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize to Linda because she wanted to come in and I didn't know how to include her in, you know, because the moment I pressed the thing, I still need to get used to this Zoom thing. Yeah, we are finished. I'll be recording recordings, one of the early part on this one. I'll make that available. Okay, so that we have a record. Okay, thank you for.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.